Hello, hello, lovely listeners. I am so excited to have on the show today Christie Williamson, who I met on LinkedIn. True story.
True story.
So I actually am hanging out way more on LinkedIn and finding it to be like actually a really great place for genuine relationship building, which I think I've missed on Instagram a little bit. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
so thank you for being an example of that, and thank you for being here.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So I actually just said this to Christy before we hit record, and I was like, I need to mention this on the podcast because what led me to ask Christy to actually come on the podcast was just as way of background. Christy's taken part in our one-to-one coaching program for corporates, and we just had a catch-up call around like how was the experience for you? Really informal chit chat. And as we were having the call, I was like, wait, this is so good. I really want people to hear this. And the call had happened. So I asked her to give us more time and come on here and share about the experience. And I was saying to her how it can seem not very time hackery to do like two calls around the same thing, but actually, here's why it is. The mistake had happened, right? Like the time was spent, the conversation had happened, and my option was either to stay in that story that this was going to waste Christie's time or ask more of her, or to ask her. And I mean, you were so sweet and receptive, and I do appreciate that so much.
Of course.
Just to ask her, like, hey, can I have some more of your time? So this is a very I'm very grateful to Christy for doing this, and I just wanted to share it with you all. Christy and I were just speaking about how mistakes happen to all of us, and you were just
Absolutely.
sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing to remember, like you were saying about reaching out to people and just asking. I mean, I think we spend, well, speaking for myself here, but I think other people will relate. We spend so much time overthinking, like, oh, if I ask this person, they're going to think I'm a nuisance or I'm going to be bothering them. But people like talking to people, people like helping out people, like just ask the person, the worst they'll say is no, and you can move on. It's not a problem. And yeah, we all make mistakes. The story I was kind of saying, I was just talking to a load of really high up global people whose, project managers, their jobs is to get things right. And one of the main takeaways from that was mistakes happen. You've almost got to expect them to happen. And that's just a normal part of life and work. So it's nothing to be stressed about.
Yeah, and I love that you're saying this because, and you shared that about, global leadership, because I think we get to this point where we're like, oh, one day I will stop making mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, we all think that, don't we? Never happens.
We get to, the way I say it is like, we get to stay human no matter like
Yeah.
what we achieve.
Exactly. And mistakes are often the way we learn. I know certainly that some of the lessons that have stuck most in my head is where I've messed up and I've had to then learn how to undo it or fix it. And also some of the best relationships in like the workplace that I've made have been when one of us has messed up and we've been like, oh my God, please help me. And then that's it, you get through it together.
Yes, love that share. Thank you. So, you got coached by one of our time hacker coaches.
I
How
did.
how was that experience for you?
It was amazing. Like I went into it already knowing it was going to be a certain level of helpful. I've worked with coaches and mentors in the past. I was really interested in this program because it was kind of taking place in a context that I hadn't quite seen before. Very, short, sharp coaching sessions, but lots of them over a period of time. And I was really interested to see how that would work. And I went into it a bit unsure, positive, but unsure of, because I know, being time hackers, I thought, oh, it's going to be just focused on time, which is fantastic. But it ended up being so much more than that. And every session, I think everyone in my life knew whenever I had a session, because I would come out and be like, oh my goodness, I learned this today in the session, or I worked through this today. And where I think it was most helpful was, of course, it was about time, but it wasn't just about, how good are you with your time? How good are your boundaries of time? How productive are you? It went a lot deeper into like, what is your relationship with time? And why is that relationship with time? How did that relationship come to be? What are your thoughts? What's your belief system around time and productivity and your worth as an employee, as a business person, as a person in general? It really went into all of that. And I was challenged a lot. I remember saying to you in our last call, the one thing I kind of took me by surprise by how much I loved it was that Emma, my coach, would challenge me on things when I would say, oh, well, you know, X, Y, Z, that happens because of this, or people think this. And she'd be like, really? Why do you think that? Is that true? Is that the case? She would always take that one next step further. You know, I was coming into this like, I've done coaching before, I know how this works. And she would always take it that like one next step. And it was such a helpful experience. And I've, you know, immediately was able to implement a lot of the things that she would walk me through. She was obviously very skilled, very knowledgeable as a coach, and would give me very actionable, specific advice and support that I could immediately put into practice, both in my work life, but also just in general. So I'm very appreciative of having gone through this program, and I love it. I recommend it a lot. Everyone listening, if you haven't done it right now, go and do it. You will thank me, I can assure you.
And I will leave the link in the show notes if you do listen to that and you do want to jump straight in, you can find it there. That was one of the things that stood out for me that you spoke about last time, that like I kind of knew was true, but hearing it from you is so powerful, which is like the quality of coaching. So
Yeah.
people listening to my podcast know that we only hire people that have been clients, and then they go through a 4 to 5 month program, and then go through a certification process, and then go through a hiring process, which sounds really rigorous, but it's done from a very loving, collaborative space. Yeah, that really stood out to me, that you were like, I've experienced coaching before, but the quality of this coaching stood out for you. Could you like share a little bit about that?
Yeah, like I've had business mentors to help me specifically with like my own business. I've had, you know, general kind of life coaches, you know, all that, the full kind of spectrum, because I'm someone who's very interested in personal development, in improving myself, you know, on a regular basis. And so I think it's something that everyone can benefit from. But in terms of how I think this coaching differed from other coaching I've done, as I said, I hadn't had it in that context of, you know, business coaching, and we're going to focus on time and, you know, productivity and come at it from that kind of business sphere. But then also the fact that it was, you know, 20-minute sessions. So it was like short, quick sessions that you can fit in really easily. It was so flexible. You know, sometimes it was a session a week. Sometimes we had like one a month if I was traveling for work, which I do a lot. And sometimes we had a couple sessions a week, because it was all around how much support did I feel like I needed that week? What did I want to talk about? And, you know, Emma would always have a structure of what, you know, different things that we could talk about. So if I kind of came into a session a bit like, oh, I'm not really sure what to kind of talk about today, she was like, right, cool, let's talk about X, Y, Z. And it was always really like on point. She would bring up something and I'd be like, oh my God, yes, that's absolutely what I need to speak about, you know? So it just shows that the training and all the work that you guys do behind the scenes is really applicable. But then I could also bring in something if there was something that happened, you know, in my work life that I was like, I've really like, this is what I'm struggling with. Like a big thing I can struggle with is procrastination. And a lot of that is related to anxiety. And so we would like, you know, work that back. And again, like, let's not just focus on your work and how well you are doing with your time. Let's like really walk that back. And I wouldn't have thought we could have gone that in depth in such short sessions in what is essentially business coaching, but we did. And it was so helpful. And I think, like I said, coaching is really great for, I think everyone can benefit from it. But this like new movement into coaching that is targeting people in the workplace is so valuable. And I think we're going to see a lot more people starting to jump on this being something that employees expect when they come into a workplace. They should be getting coaching. And you see it more for leadership, which is obviously needed, but just not just to make good employees, though, of course, that's a good way to sell it to a business. We're going to make your employees more effective, but for their own well-being and their own mental health in terms of like, if they are struggling at work, if they do have that stress. And I felt that coaching that I received really effectively touched on both of those areas. It was very business driven, which was great, but like I said, it's helped me in my own personal life and my own relationship with work,
Yes.
which I hadn't seen before. So
Thank you so much. Something fun. I don't know if you even know this, but this podcast and my whole movement started around anxiety and procrastination. It used to be called Fuck Anxiety and Get Shit Done. And exactly that. I think the problem with a lot of time-based and productivity-based trainings is that they stay very much on the surface and solve for time. And I don't think time needs solving for, right? It's like it's always fixed, it's predictable. We know what it's going to look like. It's our interaction that's different. So I love that you shared that.
Yeah, you really don't. I really didn't need someone to come in and tell me how to organize my calendar. Like, I know that. And if you're someone who struggles with time, you know that. You've probably Googled to your heart's content, how can I get better at productivity? So the fact that, your training goes beyond that. I mean, one of the things we even talked about, I know I've thrown the word around a lot, productivity, but I was like, I'm almost sick of the word productivity because I want to talk about not have I been productive today, but have I had a fulfilling day, and whatever that looks like. And that was something that we talked about as well, just as an example of how language can really make a difference. It's not just about, well, we're going to teach you how to, schedule your meetings during the day, which can be helpful. It's very top surface.
It can so be helpful. And I think I think we go to the root because what happens is we're like, oh, I'm going to schedule focus time for 2 hours every morning, and then meetings creep in or something takes longer or a kid gets sick or you get sick or whatever. And you're like, wait, now what do? I used to coach a lot of doctors that were like, what do I do when the hour that I've allocated for the admin gets eaten into, which by the way happens every day. I'm like, you stop scheduling the hour for admin. You cannot. One tool, I think time management tools are great, but they don't work for every person every day. And what I've seen, and maybe you've experienced, I know for sure I experienced myself, was a lot of blaming, shaming, guilting for not being able to just follow the calendar, for not being able to just like do the things that I said I would do in 5-minute increments.
Yeah, exactly. It's very like, why am I being so lazy? Why am I being so disorganized?
Yeah.
Especially because, I'm a project manager. I come from a project management background, which is all about organizing yourself and other people. And so it would be like, I know how to do this. Why am I struggling to do this? I know better than that. Yeah. And it's like, well, because that's not the problem. That's not the problem. You can have like the most amazing system or tool, and if you're not really addressing the reasons why you're doing the behaviors that you're doing, you're having the thoughts that you're having, it's just going to be another way that you can make yourself feel bad about yourself. You've got to address, if you're procrastinating, like you're saying about how you started, as I said, I came to realize that it was because of anxiety. It wasn't because I was being lazy or because it was, I don't want to do that work or whatever. It was because of like, I was worrying about something. And so I needed to address that in order to address procrastination. So
yes, everybody listen to what Christie just said. We don't procrastinate because we're lazy or bad people or flawed. We procrastinate because we are worried about something. Like if you're telling yourself this is going to be really hard, or this is going to be really long, or this could get me fired, or lots of people are going to have eyes on this, or like you are literally motivated to put that thing off. Like it makes complete sense. It's not lazy, it's smart. Like you have a really smart brain that's like, danger, let me not do the thing.
It's trying to protect you. I think that's the thing, like, as well, like changing that thought process. I would always be like, oh, why am I doing this? Why is my brain doing this? And then just to like flip that language around and instead be like, my brain's trying to protect me from something. And I love it for that, but that's not quite helpful. So let me instead like try to implement a system or a process, whatever that looks like, and also other things as well in my life that can help just decompress and not stress out my brain and help it learn that there's not, you know, a saber-toothed tiger lurking at my inbox. It's, you know, so it can calm down.
Yes. And I love what you mentioned there about like you said about not only understanding my brain but loving my brain, and I think that's a missing piece for so many of us. And I
Yeah.
want everyone listening to think about like what's the difference when you sit down to your desk and you're like, oh no, I was gonna say oh shit, and then I was like, don't swear, but I forget I can swear, it's my podcast.
Yeah.
We can
Oh no.
swear. Yeah. Oh shit, I didn't do the thing that I was meant to do yesterday. And one option is to go into like, well, that's because I don't, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, and I'm behind, and what that's going to create versus like, of course I didn't. I like had something come up or whatever the reason, it doesn't actually matter the reason. And then meeting that with understanding, compassion, and like, okay, I've got you, and like we can do it. Like one
Yeah.
of those moves way faster. And that is the epitome of time hacking. It's not
Oh yeah.
about being perfect and following everything. It's about how you respond to your most human self.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing, you know, instead of, as you said, like beating myself over the head about, you know, oh, I didn't do this, I'm going to get in so much trouble. You know, people are going to, and a lot of time that fear comes from the place of, oh, people are going to realize I'm not that good. People are going to think I'm really bad. And, you know, they're going to realize that I'm an imposter or, you know, whatever it might
Mm.
be that's actually really kind of leading that fear. And
Mm.
instead, kind of, like you said, coming at it from a place of love, being like, all right, you know, come on, bitch, we've got this. Like, I'm going to stick on
Yeah.
a candle. I'm going to put on some good music, make myself a coffee, and I'm going to just sit down. I'm just going to get it done. And most of the time, you're not going to get in trouble because people won't even notice because they're too busy trying to deal with their own things that they haven't done. Or
Yeah.
if you do, we'll just get over it. It's not the end of the world. I can assure you. I say this to myself all the time as my mantra. It's like, it's fine. It's good. It's not life or death. Like, just send the email. It's gonna be okay.
Yes. I love that. Um, I also, you mentioned actually the actual program. So for those of you
Mhm.
listening, you might not know this, but what we have at Time Hackers is like a written out program so that you can show up to the sessions completely like, I don't know what's going on, but also the flexibility so that, as you said, you can come to the sessions and be like, wait, this is something that I want help on. This is something that I want support on. And I think that you shared a little bit about the value of that just for like being able to show up without having to prepare, because I think oftentimes, and even when I was starting out getting coaching, I used to feel like there's work to do. I've got something to do in order to show
Yeah.
up and create value from this time that I've allocated. So I'd love for you to talk on that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like sometimes when people might think about kind of business coaching or kind of support in that area, they might think about like when their business scheduled a meeting and they have to all go to this meeting room and they're going to get this really poorly printed out PowerPoint presentation, and you know they're going to have this really awkward kind of like ice-breaking conversation or whatever like hellish stuff our businesses try to do to help us. It was the complete opposite, obviously. It was so that flexibility, like for me and for a lot of people, especially now, I think in the kind of work environment that we're seeing, a lot of people working from home, juggling more than one job or role or looking after their kids or whatever it might be, not having to schedule in a really kind of cumbersome, strictly kind of managed hour, 2 hour session. Instead, like I said, it was 20 minutes, hop on Zoom, have your conversation. You know, it's enough time to kind of really break something down, but without it completely taking over your morning. You know, I could schedule it in between meetings, in my lunch break, before work. And as I said, like sometimes we would have a couple sessions a week and I could just get, you know, you guys have got this really easy booking system. Book your time, book your date that suits you, and that's it. It takes like 30 seconds to book a session. Or when I was traveling for work and I would just say, hey, I'm not going to be available for a couple of weeks. Okay, cool, no worries. Whenever you're next available, there was no, we have to get it done by this time, or, you know, or whatever. Like there was never any pressure. There was never any like strict formality to it. So it was very casual. It felt like chatting with a friend a lot of the time. And it was just so easy to work around my life. And I think that just helped with, feeling comfortable to talk about things, not feeling like it was this kind of like rigid kind of session or anything like that. It was easy, flexible, and I could make it work around my life rather than having to organize my schedule around the program. So for one of many reasons, that is really why I recommend it. And I think it would be, obviously I was doing a one-on-one. I think it would also be really helpful if you've got like a team, if someone wants their entire team to go through it, is, well, they're not having to take a load of time out of the day to do the session. They're not, don't have to worry about them being away from their desk or something for a super long amount of time. 20 minutes, have a coffee, get it all done for your team in a day or a couple of days or a couple of weeks or whatever it looks like. It's the flexibility is a huge kind of good thing about this program.
Yes, I think it's so funny because essentially we're supporting like high achieving, busy, ambitious people that are already typically like taking on more work and in doing all the things. And it was a real consideration for us from like what is approachable and accessible and truly supportive. And I remember once years ago finding this program that was like, I'm going to help you with time, but you need to like give us 3.5 hours a week. I was like, what?
Exactly.
Like
if you're someone that's not good with time, that's probably not gonna help you, So no, like you could do it on your phone. That's the thing, because it's like Zoom. You don't have to sit at a desk and do it. You can do it on your phone. It's fine. And I think especially for like women, if they're like trying to do their own business or they're looking after the kids, like it's having that flexibility is such a win when you've got 1,000,001 other things to do, and almost comes a bit of like a self-care thing. I know that word gets bandied around so much, but a lot of people, again, women especially, so much of our work roles and our home roles are in service to other people. We're looking after other people, we're organizing other people, whether it's our families or our teams, whatever that looks like. So to be able to just take a quick 20 minutes and just have a chat, talk about things that you're struggling with at a time that suits you, in a way that suits you, is so helpful.
What's so interesting is often the companies that we speak to, I think we're so not conditioned to get the support ourselves that they're like, oh, I'm going to get this for my team, but not necessarily for myself. So just had that happen. And it's like, obviously it's a great and amazing, but I think you are speaking to something there, which is like, oh, I can see the value of this. I want this to support my team. And we don't think like what supports me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think sometimes, again, there might even be the sense of like admitting weakness if you, especially as a manager, I think as well, you don't want to kind of say that you don't have the skills in order to manage or something like that. But even if you do, even if you don't feel like you struggle with time, even if you're like, yeah, I've got it down, I've got my system, it's great, to be able to just improve upon that and develop it and talk to someone, a third party confidential person that you can just talk about things and it can help you learn skills. And again, as I said, that to me, that challenging aspect where I would kind of state something and I was challenged on, is that really the case? Let's unpick that. I think everyone, but especially managers, can really help. You can only ever get better as a manager by doing something like this. And if you're a strong manager coming in and you can show these skills as an example, your team are going to really want to like emulate that and improve upon themselves. So it's almost like a win-win in a way,
Yeah, I mean, everything stems from the top. So a willingness to get support also stems from the top. So I appreciate that. Why do you think companies should care about this?
Oh, I mean, even if we just take it from the kind of slightly more cold-hearted perspective, of if you do have a company that is just really caring about the bottom line, it's been proven time and time again, if you have happy, fulfilled workers, they're going to do their job really well. And because if you come in and you're in a bad mood or you're stressed and you don't know how to handle your meetings, of course you're not going to be as efficient. I mean, how many like studies are there that the amount of times that people are actually efficient in an 8-hour working day? I can tell you it's not 8 hours.
I literally have this pulled up, like
There we go.
37% of the time. This was like something I was just reading. I wonder where there we go. Employees waste 360 hours every year just searching for information within their business, absorbing 26% of salaries.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have someone who understands themselves and is less stressed because of it, is having that flexibility to implement a system that helps them achieve in the best way, that's only ever going to be a good thing for businesses. You know, they are going to save, as you just said, so much more money by investing in something like this. But stepping away from that, because, you know, we all hope that businesses care a little bit more about, you know, about their workers than just the bottom line. As I've said, having coaching like your program and in general improves the well-being of workers in their home lives. If they feel supported in that way, and again, as you said, it's coming from the top, their company is demonstrating we care about you, we care about your mental health, and we are also showcasing that by our managers going through this. You know, it's not just all talk. We're actually committing to this, we're putting money into this, time into this. You're only ever going to get better employees. It's going to help loyalty to a company at the end of the day. And I think especially with the younger workforce as well, like this is something, and I really admire the younger workforce, like the Gen Zs coming in, because they know what they want and they know that they should be getting that, that it should be expected. And I think they're right, you know, and having a company that can say, we really care about our employees. If you're stressed, don't worry, we've got you. You know, we're going to help you work in the best way that suits you. We're not going to just chain you to your desk and make you work in this one way, you know, one system fits all thing. They're only ever going to grow. They're going to get a more loyal workforce. They're going to get a more efficient workforce. You're going to see sickness go down because if people can manage their stress, you're not going to have, and I'm saying all this with an HR background as well. So, you know.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, exactly. So coming from that perspective, you're going to see a reduction of sickness. You're going to see better engagement rate from your employees. As I say, going to be more loyal. You're going to get, your customer service is going to improve. So your customers and clients are going to get a better service. So they're going to be more impressed with your company. It's only positives. It's just one aspect of the many things a company can do to really like help their employees. But I do think it's a very important pillar in building a really strong foundation, because at the end of the day, if a company doesn't have a workforce, they don't have a company. No amount of AI or robots or anything will ever replace, you know, a really strong human workforce. And if you don't have that, you don't have a company. So
yes, we always say things don't take time, they take people.
absolutely, like, you know, you need people.
You want people as well, you know, you want
like that human touch is just so important when it comes to any kind of service, you know, any kind of product or business out there. Having happy workers, it's like happy employees, happy life. That is the way to think about it.
Yes. And you just touched on it. I would love to hear from you with your HR background. Like, what would you say to HR people? Because one of the things, you know, we're having discussions with lots of businesses, and I would just love to hear from you. Any like kind of advice on what we could say to HR people having been through the experience as we are looking to build new relationships. And if there's any HR people listening, get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for HR, I mean, I know a huge push for HR departments right now, or people services, you know, whatever they might be called, is engaging their workforce, because especially after the pandemic, it's much more like rocky plains, I think now. People's lives have changed and what their responsibilities look like with the movement to a lot of people working from home. Which can, while being amazing, I work from home myself, I'm a huge advocate of it, but it can lead to isolation, especially if there are stresses in the home. But also with a new generation of workers coming into the workforce, who, especially the ones who went through school during the pandemic, they've had such a tough time, they've had so little support. They've had their foundation of what the kind of school to work life looks like completely rocked. And so I know that HR departments are trying really hard to engage their employees to stop them from resigning. Let's be very blunt. You know, we had the great resignment period of like, what was it, 2022, when everyone was just handing in their notice because suddenly people realized that actually life is more important and their well-being and their health is more important. And if a company doesn't support that, support a person in their well-being and their health, in managing their stress, even if that stress is not coming from the workplace, they're going to lose their employees, or at the very least, they're going to have disengaged, ineffective, unproductive employees, and that's just not going to help them in any way. So just I would all, I mean, you kind of touched on it already, just really come at that people perspective, that by supporting their workers, by them supporting their employees, they are enriching their lives, they're providing them with support both of their workload but also their mental load. And it's going to not just make them more productive, but make them happier, healthier people. And so they're going to see a lot of their metrics, which I'm sure every company is under a lot of pressure to try and reduce, you know, turnover and sickness and absenteeism and all that kind of thing, that they can really impact those metrics. And it will be a trackable thing to be able to come in, do this program and be like, just watch, we'll hit your KPIs. Sure.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, that's really powerful to think about and to just understand, like, even those three metrics. I'm like, oh, that's like very powerful to and I think you also touched on something huge, which is like we forget we've structurally like flipped how we work upside down in the last 5 years. And a lot of companies, and I'm all for it, all for like us finding different ways of working, flexible, hybrid, remote, all of it. And a lot of companies are just changing their policies without offering any kind of training or support around it, or providing that very high level, like how to work remotely, you know, how set up your office, like close the door, like stop distractions, versus like, no, how do I build the skill of working and getting things done and connecting to my work and even switching off from my work when it's all happening in the same place.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, while it's super flexible to be able to work from home, you know, reduction of commute and all that kind of thing, you said that, you know, how do you switch off? Because suddenly there was this, it went from being, you know, if someone was in the office, then you could contact them. And if they weren't in the office, to you can contact people at any time now. And you see I don't know about you, but I see a lot of people writing in their email signatures, I've sent this at a time that suits me. Do not feel that you have to reply straight away, because a lot more people are now working after hours. And while the flexibility of that is amazing, there is, of course, a danger there. You know, if someone overworking themselves and a manager's not going to be able to see it because they're not there. And that communication of being able to just like have a coffee with someone because they're next to you at the table or something like that, you're not able to keep as much of a closer eye on them. So you're not going to see through emails if someone's struggling.
Yes.
Especially if you have, you know, again, to go back to it, but like, you know, women, a lot of people realize that when kids had to study from home, that it was the mothers that were having to look after them. And I think also in the workplace, we saw a lot of, during the kind of lockdown in the kind of year or so afterwards, a lot of people had to take on more roles because people were leaving, and it was all very, this is just temporary. And then it's continued because we've seen that it's possible. And so now it's, you know, there are kids studying from home a lot more, and the parents are just having to deal with that. Or, you know, that people have got larger work roles now because of team.
Wow. Sorry, I think this point is huge. And I was just speaking with a friend about this who like now heads like the DEI team and the investments team and like multiple big teams, because exactly like what you're saying, we're like, oh, if people can do it. So we've had you know, lots of redundancies and teams shrinking and being like, it's going to come back, and then being like, actually, it doesn't need to come. Yeah.
Exactly.
And again, how are those people being supported, and how are you losing your best employees, and what is that costing you?
Exactly. I mean, there's this new phrase that's been bandied around. I see a lot of, if you're an efficient worker, if you're a productive worker, you're going to get punished with more work.
Mhm.
And of course, so then why should people be putting all of their effort into doing that when they're not getting any support in return?
Yes.
So coaching, again, to go back to coaching, is just one way that a business can not just show their employees that they care, but actually really do practical work in providing a confidential, safe space for their employees, but
Yes.
also helping to facilitate a conversation between them of, are you okay?
Yeah.
Because it's all very well to say, oh, well, I took on this extra work and I could do it. Oh, but a year down the line, 2 years down the line, you're probably burning out because
Yeah.
you can't work at 120% all the time. That's fine for a short period of time. But if something what was your 120% is now being seen as your 80%,
Mhm.
just like, oh, we can add another project in, or we can, we can add another 3 people to your team that you're now responsible for managing, but we're not going to give you any support on how to do that.
Yes.
People are just going to burn out, and it's just going to become this vicious cycle of losing talent.
Yes.
And like retention of talent is so important for companies. Like company knowledge, I think, is one of the most vital benefits an employee can bring to
Yeah.
understand how the company works, who the company is, all your clients, whatever that may look like. If you're just running through employees because they're coming in, you're burning them out, and then they're resigning, your company's never going to benefit. It's never going to grow. And
Mhm.
your employees are just going to not trust you as an employer. So why should they do their best?
Mhm.
They're just going to do their bare minimum because that's what they have to do to survive.
Wow. Yes. That is such a good point. And I think that's what it requires. It requires us to look a little bit in the future. And I know, like, when I was working in finance at a big company, and I
Mm.
decided to take on certifications at the same time. And before you knew it, I was in the office every day till 10 p.m. and then 1.5 days at the weekend because no one was monitoring it. No one was aware like how I was doing it. And when I would go in at the weekend, like no one was there. And of course I burnt out and I literally left the company. So like I am that example. That's why I do this work, not because I always had it figured out, but because I was literally the example. Like if I was remote working then, I cannot imagine what I would have put myself through in in a rush to like succeed.
Exactly. And again, those extra hours, as someone's putting that in, because I've been in the same position where I've had extra responsibilities added, which don't get me wrong, I love because that's a really great way to grow and improve as, learning your skills. But it's hard for people anyway to really quantify how much that extra work
Mhm.
is having an impact, how much extra time someone's having to do that. So to then also be at home alone, no one's got any visibility of all that extra work that you're doing. And, it could be something as simple as, oh, now I have to run all these reports. And
Mhm.
the other people might think, oh, yeah, that only could takes a couple of minutes, not realizing it can take like up hours to build the
Mhm.
report or to go through the data, just as an example. And
Yes.
so, again, as I said, having coaching is a way to bridge that gap
Yeah.
between the employer and the employee to ensure that they are supported in that role.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I like to keep these episodes. I mean, my interviews are always a bit longer, but not overwhelming for people to listen to. And I just think you provided so much insight into the experience and what individuals can expect and what companies can expect, and just appreciate you sharing all of that. And I guess as we close off, is there like one or two things that you feel like either you've not had the opportunity to say, but you wanted to say, or just now you're like, is there anything else I want to say? For anyone in this, people listening would be individuals thinking about one-to-one coaches, companies thinking about one-to-one coaching, and or individuals thinking about, could I ask my company for this one-to-one coaching program?
Yeah, I would just say on that is number one, you're worth it. If
Mm.
you're wondering, is it worth, doing something like this? Is it a bit silly to want something like this? You're worth it. You're worth every minute, every penny on helping yourself, improving yourself, because at the end of the day, you only have you.
Mhm.
and you have to take care of you. And if you burn out, if you're struggling, it's not worth it to get yourself to that stage. So anything that you can do to pull you from that place, and I've been there, I get it, it's hard, but I would just say to anyone that's like, oh, I don't know if this is for me, it is for you, and I promise you it will work, it will help you. For people who are thinking about how do I maybe approach this with my employer, maybe not sure what they will say or what they think, is it can never hurt to ask the question. It is something that I know in a lot of industries is becoming a lot more important. So I think for many businesses, it wouldn't be a surprise to get this question. And also, employers, sorry, will listen to their employees, the more of them that speak up. So you might think, oh, I'm just like one person asking this question. I can assure you other people are thinking the same thing. And also a lot of businesses, going to be optimistic here, a lot of businesses do want their employees to succeed and often don't know how to do it. And, speaking from an HR perspective, we do really want to help our employees. We had such a passion for wanting the best for them, but we don't really know exactly what it is that they need in order to be supported. So if you come forward and say, hey, I've seen this program and I think this would be really helpful for me, or as a manager, I think it'd be really helpful for me and my team, this is going to make us a lot more like efficient, effective in our roles. A lot of companies will snap that up and be like, great, awesome. We needed to tick that box. We didn't know how. We want to be here for you. Amazing. So what's the worst? The worst that's going to happen is they say no. But I think a lot of companies will really want to kind of jump on that and implement a program like this.
Thank you so much. And actually, we've had some people do it, and I think the worst that happens is that you don't get it immediately. You just have to wait a few months.
Yeah, there's finance processes, guys. There always is. Like,
Yeah. So if you're, yeah,
so
so if you're
on
going
it.
to do, like, if that's what I would say to anyone. If you're like, oh, maybe one day, I would say, don't assume that it's going to happen the same day when you're doing this through a company, because our experience in doing this that way is like, it can take a few months for a company to sign off on it.
Yeah.
So if you're, don't wait till you're really desperate.
Yeah,
And like, there's
exactly.
nothing else, because there's no guarantee. We've had both. We've had companies move fast, but you definitely see companies move slower than individuals that are like, I'm paying on my card.
Yeah, especially like if you're looking at like public sector, like they're going to just be by nature slow,
Yeah.
having worked in that sector. But yeah, keep at it. Don't think just because you maybe haven't heard anything that nothing's happening. Use your voice, assert your worth, and if you need something, ask for it.
Yeah.
And a lot more times than you'd expect, it will be positively received. So go for it.
Yeah, you have to think like it's so much cheaper for a company to provide. I mean, our coaching is intentionally affordable. It's not like what the lowest we can charge, but it's going to be cheaper for them to support you so you can stay in the role than it is going to be for them to lose you and hire someone else. That's maybe.
Yeah. A little tip I would say, again, from my own background, if you can go to your manager and be like, we've worked out the metrics of the cost of this program versus the lost time or whatever that might be, absenteeism or something. If you can go and be like, look, how much money you'd be saving by doing it, then you've already like halved the process for them, because that's always going to be something that comes after the conversation. So yeah, if you can like do that, I think it'll help your request.
I love that. And if you want support doing that, you can always email us, because I think we are building out like a pack that people can request to hand into their HR. So it's not ready yet, but
it's coming.
Thank you so much, Christie. I appreciate you and your sharing and your time and your wisdom. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
Yay. And thanks everyone for listening. I hope you feel inspired and ready to lean into your worth and get the support if you feel like you're listening to this for a reason, this episode was meant for you, then jump on it. The link will be in the show notes for one-to-one coaching. And you can always email team@vickylouise.com with any questions. Not .com. That's my old email. We started on mistakes, we're ending on mistakes. Team@timehackers.xyz. All right, bye everyone.